Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. So our today's topic is ASP.NET Core Introduction. So let's start. So what is ASP.NET Core? ASP.NET Core is a free, open source and cloud optimized framework which can be run on Windows, Linux, and the Mac. You can say it's a new version of ASP.NET and completely rewrite from the scratch to make it as a cross-platform and availability to as a modular framework. So initially it was launched as a ASP.NET 5, but then it was renamed as a ASP.NET Core. So ASP.NET Core is like you can say the modular framework which is available distributed into the different Nugget packages. And then what is the .NET Core? So actually many people are confused between the ASP.NET Core and .NET Core. Please note that the ASP.NET Core and .NET Core are not same. They are different, just like our ASP.NET and .NET framework. .NET Core is a fast and lightweight modular open source framework for creating the web application and services that can be run on cross-platform. So let's see why we require the ASP.NET Core. Okay, so first one is like if you see it supports the multiple platform. Means the application which we created under the ASP.NET Core can be run on the Windows, Linux, and Mac. So in this situation, you don't need to build a different application for different platform using a different framework. Previous we might be used a different framework to create the different application support to the platform. It's a fast like it's remove the dependency from web system.web.dll. So it's which is using for the browser and server communication. the the another thing is like IOC container. I personally like this concept in IOC container, like resolving the automatic dependency injection. So like previously we have to use some tools like autofac is there. So there are the different tool which uses to resolve the dependency. But in .NET Core, they have provided the inbuilt feature which can be which is used to resolve the dependencies. The next one is the integration with the modern UI framework. Like everyone know, there are the different UI framework. So you can say the Angular is there, React, Bootstrap, etc. So we can easily integrate with the ASP.NET Core. The major another major part is the hosting. ASP.NET Core application can be hosted to a multiple platform with any web server such as IIS, Apache, etc. It does not depend only IIS like a previous .NET framework. The code sharing, yeah, this is the like main, you can say, the advantage we are getting. If you build a class library in .NET Core, that can be easily accessed to the .NET framework, uh, the previous one, or you can say the mono is there. We can achieve the app versioning also. Okay, so these are the basic point. uh, just want to share with you regarding the ASP.NET Core. Please follow my channel GTech Fluent, and also for more detail you can reach to the blog, our blog. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. So today's topic is ASP.NET Core project structure overview. In previous video, we have discussed the ASP.NET Core advantages. If you want to go with that, please check the previous video. So let's start. So here I have selected the ASP.NET Core web application. If you see, like in previous video we discussed with the platform, there is a Linux, Mac, Windows, cloud service. There are the different category under this ASP.NET Core web app. So under this, I have selected the MVC model view controller application, as everyone has a familiar with this structure. So we'll go with that. And also in previous video, we have discussed like .NET Core and ASP.NET are different. So if you see on the top, uh, here it is the .NET Core, and I have selected the .NET Core 3.1. So let's see how the project structure is look in ASP.NET Core. So this is the project which I created in ASP.NET Core in MVC application. So as any MVC application, you can see there is a controller, model, and views. Okay, so these are the structure. There is another one thing introduced into the ASP.NET Core app is WW root. So in our traditional, the previous ASP.MUC application, we're supposed to create the images, CSS, JS file into one folder and be given the some path. But if you want to access such a file, you must have to compulsory put into that WW root file. So like first there is CSS which is created for the CSS JS library. You can add your custom folder here for the static files and images as per your requirement. If you see this application doesn't have a web.config, so it is replaced with the app setting.json. So all the configuration related thing we need to put into the app setting.json file. The main file which driven the ASP.NET Core application is startup file. So let's see what startup file contains. So these are the general startup file structure. If you see, there are the two methods are there. One is a configure service and configure. We'll discuss this later after like we will discuss more on this concept later. So let's see what configure has. So like this is like using the developer exception page, use the HTTP redirection, use the static files. So these static files uh, is used like a while JS and the in the www root folder files. The routing which is using in MUC, the authorization and use endpoint. But in previous MUC application we supposed to add the route, but in current .NET Core by default it is a convention based route. So it is done with this app.use endpoints. So this app.use routing, app.use authorization, these are the middlewares. So we'll discuss this later in upcoming our upcoming videos. So this is the general structure which is applicable to the any type in .NET Core. Consider your normal web application, consider your API application, and other C# project. So we'll meet in next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent, and our today's topic is ASP.NET Core main method. So I would suggest please watch my previous videos on ASP.NET Core introduction and project structure overview. I have given the link in video description. Please go through that. So let's start. So before moving to the ASP.NET Core main method, we'll see what is the main method in C#. So C# application have an entry point called the main method. It is the first method which gets invoked whenever an application started, and it is present in every executable file. The application may be console application or a Windows application. Most common entry point of the C# program is a static void main or a static void main as a parameter as a string arguments. So most of the you have a doubt or a question, as we are not creating the console application, so why we need main method in ASP.NET Core web application. So let's check. So the most important point you need to keep in mind that ASP.NET Core application is initially start as a console application, and the main method is the entry point to the application. When we execute the ASP.NET Core application, it first look for the main method, and this is the method from where execution gets started. This main method is responsible for converting your console application to your ASP.NET Core web application. So let's see in our project how it's converting to the web application. So this is the project we have created in our project structure video. We have skipped the program file in previous video. So we'll discuss in this video. So if you look at the body of main method, then uh, it, you will find it will make a call to the create web host builder, create host builder, by passing the command line argument. As you can see here, it's return the iHost builder object which build your application, or uh, eventually it converting your console application to the web application. So this build and run method is responsible to your run your console application as a web application, and this iHost builder is responsible convert returning the host builder. So this web builder dot use startup is in eventually applying your startup file while starting your application. This use startup is a extension method. So if anyone want to videos on extension method, please comment, we'll prepare the accordingly. So this is the general overview on main method. So if you have any doubt or question, please comment on the comment box. We'll provide the detail on that. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent, and our today's topic is ASP.NET Core request processing. Please watch my previous videos on ASP.NET Core. I have given the link in the description of this video. Please do subscribe and hit the bell icon to get the latest video updates. So request processing is a sequence of the events, stages and components that interact with each other to process the HTTP request and generate the response that goes back to the client. In this video, we'll discuss the different stages of ASP.NET Core request processing. So let's start. When application starts, it's look for this main method, and this is where the execution starts. This main method configures the ASP.NET Core and it converts your console application to the web application. So eventually when our ASP.NET Core application started, it started as a console application, and this main method convert our console application to the web application. So if you take a look at the main method, it's called create host builder with the command line arguments, and this create default builder method creates the web host with a pre-configured default setting. As a part of setting up a web host, startup class is also configured using use startup extension method of iHost builder class. So next stage in the request processing is the startup.cs file. So by convention, startup class in ASP.NET Core is named startup. This class has two methods. First is a configure service and second is a configure. So configure services method configure services which is required by the application. So this is where we are configuring our global services which is accessible or required, or you can say functionality implementation in our application. The configure method setups the application's request processing pipeline. This request pipeline is configured with the help of different middlewares. So it is very important that we understand these two methods. We will be revisiting these two methods several times as we are progress with this video series, and we'll discuss them in details. Next stage in request processing is a middleware. So middleware component is used to set up the request processing pipeline in ASP.NET Core. This pipeline determines how the request is processed. This request pipeline is configured as a part of application startup by the configure method in startup.cs file. So we will be discuss more or cover the more detail in our upcoming videos on middleware. So next stage is controller initializers, and it's consists of the MVC route handler, controller factory and controller invoker. So MVC route handler begins the process of initialization and executing our controller. Controller factory, which is responsible for creating the instance of the controller class. Controller action invoker is a component which is find and select the appropriate action method on that controller to be process the request. Before the method is called, model binding take place which map additional data to our HTTP request. After this, the action filter is called, which is before action or after action. So after our action result has been prepared, the next stage trigger is result execution. MVC separates the result from the executing the result. If the result is a type of view, then the view agent will be called and it is responsible for finding and rendering our view. If the view result is not, the action result will be usually execute and generate its own response. This result execution is what finally generate the response and to that HTTP request, and it goes back to the client. So this is the request processing pipeline of .NET Core. Please do comment if you have any doubt or query. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic is ASP.NET Core middleware. Before moving, I would recommend you please watch my previous videos on ASP.NET Core. I have given the link in the description of the video. Also to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get the latest video updates. So in this video, we'll discuss and understand what is a middleware in ASP.NET Core. Understand the middleware pipeline. What are the existing middleware available in ASP.NET Core? Create middleware or add middleware in request pipeline. So let's start. First we check what is a middleware in ASP.NET Core. In ASP.NET Core, middleware is a piece of code that are assembled to an application pipeline to handle an HTTP request or a response. A given middleware component in ASP.NET Core has a very specific purpose. For example, we may have a middleware component that authenticate user, another piece of middleware to handle the errors, and yet another middleware to serve a static files such as JavaScript file, CSS file, or images. In ASP.NET Core, a middleware component has access to the both the incoming request and the outgoing response. So the middleware component may process an incoming request and pass that request to the next piece of middleware in the pipeline for the further processing. For example, if we have a logging middleware, it might simply log the time of the request is made and pass that request to the next piece of middleware for the further processing. A middleware component may handle the request and decide not to call the next middleware in the pipeline. This is called short circuiting in the request pipeline. Short circuiting often desirable because it avoids an unnecessary work. For example, if the request is for the static file, like an images or a CSS file, the static file middleware can handle and serve that request and short circuit rest of the pipeline. This means in our case, static file middleware will not call to the MVC middleware if the request is for the static file. Middleware component are must be executed in order they are added into the pipeline. So we need to take care of a sequence execution of the middleware. Otherwise, it will not function as expected. So request delegate are used to build the middleware or request pipeline. Request delegate are configured using run, map, and use extension methods on iApplication builder type that is passed into the configure method in the startup file. An individual request delegate can be specified inline as an anonymous method, or it can be defined as a reusable class. These reusable classes are a middleware or a middleware component. So we will understand how the middleware pipeline is or request pipeline is processed. So in ASP.NET Core, request pipeline consists a sequence of a request delegates called one after next. As this diagram shown, the thread of execution follows the black arrows. This has been taken from the Microsoft official documentation. Each delegate has the opportunity to perform the operation before and after the next delegate. Any delegate can choose to stop passing the request on to the next delegate and instead handle the request itself. You can now relate this with our static file example which we have discussed previously. Consider middleware 1 is a logging middleware, middleware 2 is a static file middleware, and middleware 3 is MVC middleware. If the request is made for the static file, then request processing goes to the till middleware 2, that is static file middleware, and return back from the middleware 2 only, and it will not go to the middleware 3. You can see the example of setting up the middleware pipeline in default website template. So now let's check what are the existing middleware available in ASP.NET Core. When we create an application in ASP.NET Core, it has some built-in middlewares available. So let's see what are those. So first one is the exception middleware. So it is used to handle the error for the development environment as well as a non-development environment. Authentication middleware is used to implement the authentication in your application. CORS is used to configure the CORS origin resource sharing. Routing is used to define and consider the routing request. Session middleware is used to manage or provide the session. Static file middleware is used to provide the support for the serving the static file such as the JavaScript, CSS, and others. So depending on your application requirement, you may add many middleware request pipeline into the pipeline. So let's see how we can add the custom middleware or add the configure the request pipeline. So let's switch to the Visual Studio. So we will create the simple middleware to add the message into the response. So before adding message, let's run our application and see whether it's working or not. Yes, so our application is working correctly. So let's add middleware. I already have a code snippet, so I will add directly into the configure method. So this is the method middleware we have added. So it will simply return the hello world message. So let's run and see. So notice in the browser, we will get the response like a hello world from the GTech Fluent, but we are not getting that welcome screen which we previously seen. That is because we have not passed our middleware control to the next middleware. So let's see how we can pass that. So with the help of next delegate, we are passing our request to the next middleware in the pipeline. So let's run and see. See in the browser, like we are getting the welcome screen with the response from our middleware. For more complex request handling functionality, so ASP.NET Core team recommended to implement your own middleware in the separate class by exposing an as an extension method. So let's see how we are use that. So for this, we need to create one class where we are implementing this same functionality. So I have already created the class with this request logging middleware where we are doing the same thing. So let's call from our startup configure method. So let's comment out this and call our middleware and see the output. Look, we are getting the same output on the adding middleware in the class. So now we have learned the basic about, or you can say the adding the middleware, how we can add and middleware and configure the request pipeline. So please let us know if anyone has any doubt or queries. We will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Client. One of our channel subscriber give us a suggestion to provide a numbering to our video tutorials. So I would like to thank you for the suggestion. Our today's topic number 6 in ASP.NET Core video series is ASP.NET Core routing. So in this video, we'll discuss and understand what is routing, how it's work, and how to configure the routes. So let's start. So first we check what is routing. So routing in ASP.NET Core is a process of mapping incoming requests to the application logic that are resides in controllers and methods. ASP.NET Core maps incoming requests based on the route that are configured in your application. And for each route, you can set a specific configurations such as default values, message handler, constraints, and so on. There are two techniques of routing. First one is a conventional based routing and second one is a attribute based routing. So conventional based routing is determined based on the conventions that are defined in route template. And at runtime, it will map requests to the controllers and actions. Attribute-based routing is determined based on the attributes that you set on your controllers and methods. In this video, we will discuss conventional-based routing. We will be covering attribute-based routing and use endpoint routing, which is introduced in ASP.NET Core 2.2 and above version in our upcoming videos. So let's check how the routing is work. When the request came from the browser at our application, the controller in MVC handles the incoming request and responds to the user action. The incoming request URL is mapped to the controller action method. This mapping is done by the routing rule defined in your application. If URL is not matched, is written as a page not found response. For example, when the request is issued to the home/index, this URL is mapped to the index action method in home controller class. Similarly, when the request is issued to the home/details/1, this URL is mapped to the details action method in the home controller class, and the one value in the URL is automatically mapped to the ID parameter of the detail action. So now let's check how to configure the routes. So let's switch to the Visual Studio. We'll run our application and see the results of the route that we have discussed previously in this video. So when we request for the index/home/index, then it is mapped to the index action in home controller. When we request for the home/details/1, then it is mapped to the home controller in detail action and with the ID parameter 1. So if I change the parameter, if you see, it will call to the change. So if I request is made without a controller or action, so it is still calling the index method in the home controller. So if you notice, we have not explicitly defined any routing rules in our ASP.NET Core application. So the question comes to your mind, how this URL is mapped to the index action in home controller. This is because we are using this use MVC default routes. If you go to the definition by pressing the F12, if you see the default route is configured with the controller name equals to a home, action name equals to index, and the parameter as a optional. So use default routes is work in the most scenario. But if you want to change the default route name, or you can say the default route action, or set up the multiple route, then we were not able to do with this use default routes. So let's see how to fix that. So to achieve such a requirement, we will use MVC instead of default routes. So I have a code snippet I will directly add here. So if you look at the template, it is similar to the use MVC default route. So this use MVC default route is internally calling to the app.useMVC. So let's run and see it's working. Okay, so let's change the default action name to about. Look, we are getting the about screen. So without adding the calling the about action. So now we have understand about routing in ASP.NET Core. In our next video, we will cover use endpoint routing, which will introduce in .NET Core 2.2 and above version. So we will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 7 in ASP.NET Core video series is use endpoint routing. So in this video, we'll discuss new endpoint routing feature that is added in ASP.NET Core middleware pipeline from ASP.NET Core 2.2 and above versions. So now let's understand how ASP.NET Core 2.1 and below version routing is configured. So for this, I would recommend you please watch our previous video on ASP.NET Core routing to understand the routing in more detail. In ASP.NET Core version 2.1 or below, routing is configured using app.useMUC with default route or app.useMUC middleware. And this middleware must be configured at the end of request pipeline. The problem with this is an operation or a functionality which depends on a route URL or route values that need to be implemented before the execution of route middleware, and can be done by accessing the route path from the current request context instead of route data. For example, we have authorization middleware to check user has access to the about action. So in this case, route data is not available because routes are configured at the end of request pipeline using app.useMUC or useMUC with default route middleware. So in ASP.NET Core 2.2 and above version introduce new feature called endpoint routing. Endpoint routing is a system to handle the routing across the different middleware system such as MUC, Razor Pages, Blazor, SingleR, and gRPC. To consume endpoint routing, we need to configure two middlewares. First one is use routing and second one is use endpoints. So use routing should be configured before any other middlewares like authentication, authorization, or custom middleware. Use routing middleware populate the current HTTP context with the route values and controller metadata, which is not available in previous version of ASP.NET Core. So many middleware after use routing middleware has a capability to access the route values or controller metadata. Use endpoint should be configured at the last in the application. Use endpoint consists the all convention based URL, and it is responsible for delegates and return the response. So let's see how we can use endpoint routing in our custom middleware. If you see on a screen, after static file middleware, app.useRouting is configured, and at the last, app.useEndpoint is configured, and in between them, our custom middleware is configured. On configuring app.useRouting, app.useRouting middleware, current HTTP context get populated with the route data, which will be accessed in the middleware between the endpoint middleware. Now, in our custom middleware, getting the action name from the request context. So we can identify the route action name and action method very easily from the route values. This is only possible because of the endpoint routing techniques. So let's see route metadata working in action, and let's switch to the Visual Studio. So to demonstrate the difference, we have created the two projects, one in ASP.NET Core 2.1 and another is ASP.NET Core 3.1 version. The project you have seen, it's in ASP.NET Core 2.1, and as we discussed earlier, we have created the middleware to check the user action. So let's see so current URL we are issuing is home/index. So if I issue the URL of about, so it's written with the response because we have written the response from writing the about. But if I issue the request index slash about, let's see what's happened. So it's still returning me the response because this is matching with the path, not matching with the action. So this is the problem with the ASP.NET Core 2.1. So let's see how we can achieve in ASP.NET Core 3.1. Now we have switched to the ASP.NET Core 3.1 version project, and here also we have a same middleware to checking the action name, but instead of checking the path, we are taking the action name from the route values. So let's see what is the result. Home/index. Okay, about. So it returning the response as a about. So if I issue index slash about, so it will not checking the about because now here we are getting the action name as an index. Now let's see what happen if we are not configure this app.use routing middleware. Just comment out and run. If you see, we are getting the error because we are not getting the route data collection. So now we have learned a new feature to use endpoint routing and how to configure the endpoint routing. Do comment if anyone have any suggestion or query. We will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 8 in ASP.NET Core video series is attribute routing. So in our previous two videos, we have discussed the routing and user endpoint routing in ASP.NET Core 3.1. So in this video, we'll discuss and understand the attribute routing with examples. So attribute routing supports from the MVC5, Web API 2 and above versions. As name consists, in this routing, attributes are used to define the routes. So attribute routing provide you a more control over the URIs by defining the route directly on action and the controllers. So let's see how to enable the attribute routing in ASP.NET Core. So in order to use the attribute routing in ASP.NET Core 3.1, we need to do two things in our startup.cs file. First, just like the convention-based routing, we need to include MVC controller and views in the service layer. Next, we need to call the new method called map controllers inside the use endpoint methods. So these map controllers methods enable the attribute routing and can be used along with the other method like map controller route and map area controller route, etc. So let's see how to define the attribute routing. So routes are defined on the action level or a controller level with the help of route attribute. So you may notice that route attribute has been applied on the both action and the controller level. This is different from the .NET Framework MVC application, where we need to use the root prefix attribute, which is now deprecated. So let's switch to the Visual Studio and see the attribute routing with example. So we are in our project, which we are using for this video tutorial series. So we are in startup.cs file. So to enable the attribute routing, we need to configure first, add a controller with views, which is already added with our default template because we are using the convention based routing previously. So next step is we need to add the map controllers. So just comment out this and call the map controllers. So these map controllers enable the attribute routing for our application. So let's run the application and see. So let's try to access the index action from our home controller. Look, we are getting the error because we don't have the route configure yet. So we need to configure the route. So let's configure for the index action. So here come in our home controller in index action. We define the route with the route attribute. So we define the template home slash index. Okay, so let's run and check. Let's check the action is working. Yes, now we are able to access the index action. So similarly, we'll apply for the about action. So we will able to access the about page as well. Let's run. So let's access the about page. Yes, we are now able to access the about page as well. So if you notice the home, that is controller name, get duplicated while defining our route. So let's remove this duplication from here. So what we do, we define at controller level, that is home, and we remove from action level. Let's see and home slash index. Yes, we are able to access this. So if you notice, when our application started, we are getting the error page not found. This is because we don't have any default route configure in our application. So how to configure that? Let's check. The default route is configured by defining the slash. So I am making the home controller as a default controller for our application and the index action as a default action for our application. So when we start the application, the index page get loaded. So let's run and see. Yes, now default page get loaded. So we are able to get the index page as a default page. So now suppose we got a requirement. So we need to access this with the different controller name. So we can configure or achieve with the multiple routes. So simply I will add another route which name is home slash index. It will get called. So now I am accessing home test slash index instead of home. So yes, I am able to access this as well. Now let's see how to define the parameter for our action. So suppose our index action is receiving the parameter of ID. So the parameter must be defined inside the curly braces. So the ID. So let's run and check slash index. Look, it is not getting loaded because we need to pass parameter value. So I'm passing the one as a value. So now it's getting loaded. So let's see how our parameter get make the optional. So we need to mark with the question mark. So let's run and see. Home, just check the home slash index. Yes, now we are able to access with the home slash index because we have make our parameter as a optional. So another question is come to our mind, if we are defining the multiple routes, how it is executing. So the sequence of the execution. By default, it is executed as per it defined on the controller level or action level. But you can make the change or define your own sequence execution by applying the order attribute. So I am defining this must be executed first, order 1. So with the help of order parameter, you can pass the value and define your route sequence. So in this way, we'll define the attribute routing. So let us know if anyone has any question or doubt. We will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 9 in ASP.NET Core video series is configurations in ASP.NET Core. So in this video, we'll discuss the different way of storing the configurations, what is the default configuration in ASP.NET Core, and how to read the configuration in ASP.NET Core. So in ASP.NET Core, the web.config file was totally out of use. But if you want to host an ASP.NET Core web application on IIS, you must need to still use it. Instead of web.config, the configuration of ASP.NET Core application is based on the list of key value pairs collected at the runtime from the variety of data sources, such as settings file, which include the JSON, XML, and INI file, command line arguments, environment variables are there, in-memory objects, Azure key vaults, and we can also create the custom provider and add them into our ASP.NET Core application. So for our video tutorial series, we required setting files, environment variables, in-memory objects. So if anyone wants to create the video or cover the other configuration options, please let us know and do comments on this video. You might be worried about how to manage to add the files and read the data from the different data sources. So don't worry, all values from the different data sources are loaded and composed into the single container. and the configuration data is commonly built into the constructor of startup.cs class file. So let's switch to Visual Studio and the C configuration in action. So we are in our project which we have created for this video tutorial series, and before making any changes for the configuration, we have added one key in app.setting file. The key name is myJSON key, and in startup.cs file we have read that key from the configuration. So let's run and check. Look, we are getting the value from that our key, but as of now we have not did any changes for this configuration. So the question come to our mind is how that configuration is work. So this is because the new feature which is introduced in ASP.NET Core 2.2 and above version is called default configuration. So now let's see where the default configuration is done. Default configuration is done during the process of building the web host inside the program.cs file in create default builder method. So if you check the definition of this method by pressing the F12, you will get this information like this will configure or load the Microsoft configuration details by default, and you can notice the app.setting file is included with the environment. So this is the official code I have got from the Git repository. So you can notice this is the code which is loading the app.setting file as a default configuration in ASP.NET Core. So now let's see how to override this configuration with our own configuration. Now we will comment out this line, and with the help of configuration builder we have added our app setting.json file here, and we will assign this configuration to the default build method is there. And now what we have did, we have override the default configuration and we assign our own file app.setting.json which is previously loaded into the default configuration. So now let's run and see. Look, we are getting the same result. So now let's see how to add the XML file into this configuration. Similar way, for JSON we have a add.json file extension method. So similar way we have a add XML file, and we'll give the XML the name of the file, and inside the XML file we have a this key my XML key. So we'll read that value here. So let's run and see. Look, we are getting the value from XML. So in this way we add the XML. So let's see how to add the INI file in the configuration. So similar way we'll add the INI file. So we have a method for add INI file, and we'll give the name of our INI file. So I have created this file. So inside INI file we have a key of my INI file. So similar way we read the value from this configuration. Let's run and see. we are getting the value from ini file also. So in this way we add these three files, settings files, which we have discussed. So now let's see how to add the environment variable. For adding the environment variable, we have a add environment variables method. So it will add the environment variable. So for this environment variable, we will cover this in more detail in our upcoming videos. So simply you need to add this as a method. So now let's see how to add .NET objects into our configuration. So for adding the .NET object, you need to use add memory collection, and inside that you can add any type of object as per our requirement. So for now I have added the dictionary with the my memory key and the in memory object value. Read this similar way which we have read previously. This is my memory key. Look, we are getting the value from this memory objects. So in this way we collectively load our configuration in single container, which is configuration builder, and we read the values with the configuration dot get values. So reading the value from the configuration, we have used this get value method. So for configuration, we have another method, is get section. So you can read the section from the config directly. So if you want to read the section in like logging, so you can directly read that. So we have read the configuration in service, but now let's see how to read the configuration in controller. So to read the configuration in controller level, so first we need to add the configuration dependency in services. So in this way, we add as a singleton object in the configuration, and let's comment out this. And in controller, what we need to do, we need to get the dependency of I configuration. So we will be covering dependency injection in our upcoming video in more details. And in similar way, we read the configuration keys here, which we have read in startup file. So let's run and see. Look, we are getting the values from the our configurations which we have stored. So in this way, you store the information of your configuration from the different data sources, and you can read as per your requirement. So please let us know if anyone has any doubt or queries. We will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 10 in ASP.NET Core video series is configuration with environment variables. Typically, in professional application development, there are multiple phases where an application is tested before publishing to the real users. These phases by convention are development, staging, and production, where as a developer might like to control the behavior of an application based on the phases of the application. And that is the environment variable indicates the runtime environment which is application is currently running. So one of the question come to our mind is why we need a different environments like development, staging, and production. So development environment, we software developer as a typically use this environment for our development day-to-day work. We want non-minified JavaScript and CSS files to be loaded on development environment to make debugging easy and testable. Staging environment, most of the organization trying to keep this staging environment as identical as possible to the actual or a live production environment. The primary reason for this environment is to identify the deployment related issue and complete the end-to-end testing. We usually do not troubleshoot or debug on a staging environment. Production environment is a live or actual environment which is used by the end user. And here we need to configure our JavaScript or CSS file to be loaded as a minified version to improve the performance and the better security reason. In ASP.NET Core uses an environment variables called ASP.NET Core underscore environment. The value of this variable can be anything as per your need, but typically it can be set to the development, staging and production. Now let's switch to the Visual Studio and check where to set the environment variables and how to access that. Now we are in our project which we have created for our video tutorial series. So there are the two ways to set the environment variable. The first one is we can set to the project level. So first we need to click on the project properties, go to the debug, and we were able to identify the environment variable here. So if you see, the ASP.NET Core and in underscore environment is set for the development. So now this, as of now for our application, it is default set to the development. So another way to store or change the environment variable is to change in the launch setting.json file. So just click on the launch setting and you will identify the profiles here. If you see, for the IIS Express, which is we are using here to run our application, it is set ASP.NET Core underscore environment to the development. We can change the value of this as per our need, but the most of the convenient way to keep this value as a development to more understandable functionality. So another question come to our mind is how we can set the environment variable for the staging and production, because we don't have control over them. So in staging or production environment, we typically set this environment variable in operating system, and that is done by your deployment engineer or the configuration engineer which managing the servers. So if we have not set explicitly ASP.NET Core environment variables, so it is by default set as a production. This is because the logical reason behind this is if we forget to set the environment variable to the production and it is kept as a development, so it may vary the behavior of your application and the performance of our application will be decreased because of the minified JavaScript or CSS will not be loaded as we have forget to set the environment to the production. So in our previous video, we have discussed the different way of storing the configuration, and one of them is add environment variables. So this add environment variables add all the environment variable which is stored or configured on your machine into the configuration. So let's run and see what are the environment variables configured for my machine as of now. So if you check on inside the configuration provider, inside the environment variable configuration provider, so we have around 70 configurations environment variables set to my machine. So but for now I would require only the ASP.NET Core. So how to set that? So for that we need to add as a prefix inside the add environment variables. So let's add prefix ASP.NET Core underscore environment. Let's run and see. Let's check inside the configuration. Look, we are get only one which is now set to the development. So in this way you add the configuration environment variables inside the configuration. Now let's check how to access the environment variables into your startup file. iWeb hosting service provided by the ASP.NET hosting layer, which can be configured inside the startup.cs file. If you notice, we are getting the dependency of iWeb host environment, and inside we have this is default code which is already present. So we are checking the environment is development or not. So how we can check the environment is staging, production or development? So similar way, we have a methods. of is staging environment or is production environment. So another question come to our mind, what if I need to set value something different? So for that we have a method environment is environment, and we can provide our environment name, and inside the ASP.NET Core we set that value. So we can check the environment which we have defined in custom way. So in this way we'll store the configuration of environment variables and access to our ASP.NET Core application. So please let us know if anyone has any doubt or queries. We will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 12 in ASP.NET Core video series is developer exception page in ASP.NET Core. So please do subscribe to our channel to get the latest video updates. So in this video, we'll discuss and understand what is developer exception page, how to use the developer exception page, and how to customize the developer exception page. So let's start and see what is developer exception page. So the developer exception page display the detailed information about the exception occurred. So this page is available under the Microsoft ASP.NET Core diagnostic package, which is in the Microsoft ASP.NET Core app meta package. To configure the developer exception page, we need to add use developer exception page middleware into the request pipeline. So we need to enable the developer exception page only when the application is running under the development environment, because we don't want to share detailed exceptions information publicly when apps run under the production environment. So now let's switch to the Visual Studio and understand how to use the developer exception page. So we are in our project which we have created for this video tutorial series. So now let's modify the startup.cs file and let's add one middleware which throw the error. So I have the code snippet, we'll add directly. So we have added the one middleware which simply throw the exception, which is called throw the developer exception here. Okay, so now let's run and see. So once you run your application, you will get this screen with the status code of 500, which means internal server occurred. But as a developer, when we are developing the application, you should have the idea or a detailed information about the exception. So now let's see how to add the developer exception page into our application. So let's stop. And as we discuss, we need to use developer exception page middleware. So let's add it and let's run our application. So if you notice on the browser, we are getting the same screen which we have seen previously. So this is because if you understand how the ASP.NET Core request pipeline works, then you might be know the reason of this. This is because we have added developer exception page after the error occurs. So we need to make sure our developer exception page should be added before any error occur or serving the any request. So let's correct this. Let's move our developer exception page into the above of our exception. So now let's run and see. Now we see the developer exception page as expected. So if you have any experience with the classic ASP.NET, then it is must be similar with that yellow screen. So the developer exception page contains the information. This is the title which indicates the problem, what problem in the exception. So this is the details about the exception. So if you got this, like we have throw the error like a developer exception page. Okay, it shows the exception of the location where actually the exception occurs. So if you see in the startup file line number 44. So here it will give the detail about the code where the exception is occurred. If you see the app.run, the code here it has given, and it is showing the error, and below that we have a full stacks of the information. So we will get the full stack about the exception. So now in developer exception page there are the multiple tab. The first one is a stack, so it's give the stack details about the exceptions. Second one is query string. So for this request we don't have any query string data, so it is not shown here. So let's add the query string. So let's call home/10 and switch to the tab. So if you notice, we are getting the query string parameter. So parameter name is ID and the value is 10. The third tab is cookies. So it give the information about the cookies of your browser. Third information is about the headers, the request header for this request. So what are the headers included when the request is issued? And the last one is routing. So it's give the information about the route data and endpoints. So again, here the route data and endpoint is not visible. This is because the exception is thrown before the route data is collected. So now let's move our exception inside the after routing data is collected. So let's move here and run our application. So let's switch to the routing tab. So now if you notice, this is our default route, which is configured under the index action, and the controller name is home. Okay, so in this way you will get the information about your exceptions, what are the query string, headers and routing information. As we discussed, our developer exception page should be enabled for the development environment only. So let's see how to do that. So for that, we'll add the check environment dot is development environment, and then only we'll add our developer exception page. So in this way you will restrict this page for the development environment and not expose or share the detail exception with the live environment in production. So now let's see how to customize this developer exception page. Suppose you want to customize the lines should be shown before and the after of the exception occurs. So I already have a code snippet, so we'll add it. So to customize the developer exception page, we need to use developer exception page options. So inside this source code line indicates how many lines should be shown after and before the exception of the line which occurs. So let's run and see. So if you expand this, notice our exception occurred in 56 number line. So before this, we only get the 5 line, and after this, we only get the 5 lines. So this is the configuration which limits the code line should be included into your developer exception page. So in this way, we will add the developer exception page into our application, and it will help developer to get the more information about the exception occurs. So please let us know if anyone has a query or a doubt. We will meet in our next video. Thank you. Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 11 in ASP.NET Core video series is dependency injection in ASP.NET Core. So in this video, we'll discuss and understand what is dependency injection. We'll understand the service lifetime. We will check how to register the services in ASP.NET Core and the different way of injecting the dependency in ASP.NET Core. So let's start. So dependency injection is a software design pattern that allows us to develop the loosely coupled code. So dependency injection is a great way to reduce the tightly coupling between the software components. The purpose of the dependency injection to make the code maintainable. So now let's understand what does mean tightly coupling and the loosely coupling. So in tightly coupling, the software component where depends on each other in such way that for the small change in one component, you might require lot of changes in their dependent component. And this is not a good practice in the software development. Simplest way to understand, when we create the instance of the class or the services with the new keyword, the class or the service is tightly coupled. So now let's understand what does mean by the loosely coupling. So in this case, the software components are slightly depends on each other, and if we need to change one component, then it will not affect much more on their dependent component. So we can achieve this through the interfaces. So the classes can communicate with each other with the help of interfaces. So now let's understand the service lifetime. Before we talk about how injection is done in practice, it is important to understand what is the service lifetime. When we are registering our services, then we need to register with the correct lifetime to define the lifetime of the service which is created, or do we need to share between the requests. The built-in IAC container manages the lifetime of the service on their registered type, and it will automatically dispose the service instance based on the specific lifetime. In ASP.NET Core, there are the three options of this when the service lifetime is defined. The first one is a singleton, second one is a scoped, and third is a transient. Singletons means only a single instance will be created ever, and this instance is shared between the all component that required it, and the same instance is be used always. The scope means the instance is created one per request. A scope is created on every request to the application. The next is transient. The transient component are created every time when it get requested. Now let's switch to the Visual Studio and we'll see the service lifetime and registration in details. Now we are in our project which we have created for this video tutorial series. So registering the service is done into the configure service method inside the startup.cs file. So if you see in the startup.cs file, we have the configure services and it is receiving the iService collection. So ASP.NET Core Framework includes the extension method for each type of lifetime. As we discussed earlier, there are the three lifetime. First is singleton, transient, and add scope. So respectively, this service method has extension method for each. So add scope is there. If you see, we have add transient and we have a add singleton. So these are the three methods which is created for their lifetime. So to understand the service lifetime and the registration of the services, so we have created the two services into this file. The first one is defined for the scope and second one is defined for the transient. For the singleton, we will refer the configuration because which we are already using that. So in this, simply we are logging this console.writeLine, and when a constructor or the new instance is created, it will assign the new GUID. Okay, so now let's register these services into our startup.cs file. Now we have registered our services, and let's see how to inject these services to our application. So first way to inject the services to receive the services into the constructor level. So let's see how to get the services into the constructor level. So let's go to the home controller, and in home controller constructor, we will receive or inject the dependency. So let's declare private ilog scope, call it as ilog. Similar way, we'll get ilog transient, we call it as a log transient, and we'll get dependency here. Ilog scope, we'll call ilog transient, we'll receive this, and we'll assign the dependency to the respective. Now we have inject the services into the constructor of home controller. To understand the service lifetime, we have created the two list to understand the service lifetime, and inside this will add the GUID which is created each time when the instance or the object is created for that particular services. Okay, so now let's run and see. So yes, we are getting the GUID for the each service. Okay, so another way of injecting the services is to the action method level. So sometimes we required services to the action method level instead of receiving to the controller level. So let's see how we can do that. So with the help of from services attribute, we can use that. So from services, and we'll call as a ilog scope, and we'll name it as a service. And similar way, we'll get the dependency of ilog transit, and we'll call it as a service. Okay, so make more clear, so we'll add the GUID inside this list, because every time we are creating the GUID when the instance is created. So now let's run and see. Okay, so if you notice for the transit, it is created GUID two times, means the two object is created for the transit, but the scope it will not create, because as we discussed for the scope, it will create the one object for this per request, and for the transit, when it is requested or when the object is dependency is received, it will create the object each time. So in this way, we need to take care of while registering our services. So another way of receiving the dependency is receive the dependency or getting the dependency manually. So let's see how we can do that. So with the help of request services, which is included inside the HTTP context, we'll get the services and we'll get the services type of ilog scoped and ilog transit. So in this way, we add the dependency or register the services into the ASP.NET Core. So please let us know if anyone has any doubt or queries on this. We will meet in our next video. Thank you.